Welcome to the 17th session of Healthy Head and Healthier Mind. Sir M. Vishweshwaraya had built the Krishnarajasagar Dam, which is now very famous in the Karnataka state as well as all over India. But when Sir M. Vishweshwaraya built this KR Sagar Dam, many villages got submerged in the backwaters of Kaveri. And when the villagers were submerged, some farmers lost their ancestral lands, but they were given other lands elsewhere by the government. One particular farmer became very angry on Sir M. Vishweshwaraya. He one day came to Sir M. Vishweshwaraya's office and he told, "You engineers are all cheats. For the name and fame, you people do all such big projects, and just to satisfy the government, you will put our life into trouble." Sir M. Vishweshwaraya understood that the farmer is angry on him. So, Sir M. Vishweshwaraya patiently listened to all the angry outbreaks of the farmer. Farmer kept on blaming Sir M. Vishweshwaraya that he is the root cause for the loss of the farmer's ancestral property. After a few minutes, Sir M. Vishweshwaraya asked farmer a question that, "You have been thinking that I am selfish, and you have been thinking that I am fool." Farmer said, "Yes, you are a fool. You are fooling yourself, you are fooling the government in the name of projects and spending a lot of money. Instead, many people have lost our ancestral properties and our villages are submerged. Of what use it?" Now, Sir M. Vishweshwaraya thought there is no point in argument. Somehow, farmer has to be pacified. So, Sir M. Vishweshwaraya told, "Okay, if you think that we engineers are like that, if you think that we are all fools, I'll simply give you one challenge. Go to the outside shop and bring one egg." So farmer went outside, went to the nearby shop and brought one egg. Now Sir M. Vishweshwaraya asked him, "Can you make this egg stand still on this table?" Farmer said, "How is it possible? You are proving again that you are a fool. You are asking me foolish questions. How is it possible that an egg can stand on a table?" Now Sir M. Vishweshwaraya asked him, "If at all I make this egg to stand on a table, will you agree that I am not a fool, I am intelligent?" Farmer said, Okay, go on. How is it possible? It is impossible." What Sir M. Vishweshwaraya did was, he removed the ring from his ring finger, he kept the ring on the table, and on the ring he kept the egg. Now the egg is standing straight on the table. Now Sir M. Vishweshwaraya told, "See, I have made the egg to stand on the table." Farmer said, "This is cheating. You never told that you will use your ring." Vishweshwaraya said, "I never told you that not to use any other tool. I told you to make the egg stand on the table. Now it is standing on the table." Farmer became silent. After farmer became silent, Sir M. Vishweshwaraya told him, "See, few of you have lost your ancestral property. Some villages have been submerged. But because of this dam, many districts are now being helped out. So many other farmers are being helped out because of the storage of this large amount of water. Anyhow, you have got a land elsewhere. Now use the same water for agriculture in that particular land. Don't remain simply angry on me that engineers are fools and engineers are simply serving the government for the sake of selfishness." So now look at the situation after a few decades, nobody knows the name of the farmer, but everybody knows the name of Mokshagundam Saram Vishweshwaraya and what all great works he has done all over India. I told you this story just to understand this particular picture on the slide, where one side, one person, there is an internal locus of control where he says, I control my destiny. But at the right side, it's an external locus of control where this person says, they control my destiny. It is as if the farmer is blaming Saram Vishweshwaraya himself, or farmer is blaming the government itself that they control my destiny and they deprive me of my land. But basically, it is the farmer who can control his own destiny. Wherever is the land given, there again he can start his agriculture. So basically, our thought processes control our destiny. If the control is internal, always the destiny is in our own hands. If we leave it to the external factors, and if we don't utilize our own internal resources, then naturally destiny is controlled by the outside world. The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision, told by Helen Keller. One of the very remarkable personalities on this earth is Helen Keller. Movie has been made on her biography. When she was around 18 months old, she had a serious sickness, and the sickness could not be cured even after medical treatment, and she became blind and she became deaf. At that time, she was just 18 months old. She had not yet learned any of the other skills. She did not know how to speak also. She did not know how to write also. But she had become blind, she had become deaf. But later on, she became a graduate, she became a teacher. Later on, actually, after her childhood, her parents desperately tried to train her through some other means, and she had a very efficient teacher. The teacher used to teach Helen Keller by making gestures on her hand, by making different symbolic touch on her hand. And initially, Helen Keller used to become highly impatient because she never used to understand what the teacher is trying to tell, because Helen Keller was blind as well as deaf. Now the teacher made her understand about what is water, and gradually the teacher taught her how to tell the word water, and gradually later on how to use the script, how to use the script, maybe the Braille or maybe any other suitable script, so that she can write water. Gradually, Helen Keller was able to speak to an audience, and she became a graduate in spite of not having vision, not having hearing ability. Helen Keller herself has told that the only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. People who have all other abilities, all five senses working intact, still people do not do all those things which Helen Keller could do. My dear friends, watch one very beautiful movie called Children of a Lesser God. In that movie, the hero makes many deaf people to talk. He trains the deaf people to talk. Actually, the people who are deaf, they are not dumb, they are only deaf. They are not dumb, their vocal cords are working, their tongue is working, their teeth is working, their speaking apparatus is working. They cannot speak because they are deaf, they have not heard to any sound. Normally, we learn to speak only when we listen to such sounds from the other people. So, this particular movie, very beautiful movie, Children of a Lesser God. Just watch that movie and appreciate the effort of the director, appreciate the effort of the actor who becomes successful in making the deaf people to speak. The deaf people will not be able to listen to whatever they speak also. But whatever deaf people speak, others can listen, no? That way he had trained people to speak. Actually, Helen Keller was trained to speak to an audience. Whatever she used to speak, she never used to listen. And she never could see the audience. Still, she became a remarkable orator. She became a teacher. That is the greatness of Helen Keller. Now, we should think, when we have all these five senses intact, how are we using them? We should think about it. So I'll repeat this again. The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. As long as people are within the comfort zone, they will never be able to develop creativity, or they will never be able to bring out the inner abilities to the surface. I'll just tell you a small example. When I was in the industry, I was involved in training this people who used to take admission to a mobile phone training course. I used to take theory classes, and my other colleagues used to take practical classes. Theory classes used to be in the morning, and practical classes used to be in the afternoon. It was a short duration course, 3 weeks course. In the 3 weeks, for the first 2 weeks, I used to methodically and systematically teach them about the working of a mobile phone, all the technical aspects of the mobile phone. And in the third week, at the end, in the last 2 or 3 days, I used to specifically discuss about self-development and about spiritual things. My intention was that they need not become only technical professionals, they should also become good human beings. That was my intention. So, just like I'm telling many stories in these sessions, I used to tell many stories in those sessions also, in my classes also. But I used to feel compassionate or pity for the students over there, because many youngsters used to come there, many people who would have studied only SSLC or PUC, they were not having any other successful career, and they used to join those courses just to open up a mobile phone service shop or to join into a service shop by learning these skills. And many of them were youngsters, and their income used to be really very less. So I used to give them spiritual tips, and I used to tell them one particular method by means of which even money can be made abundant in life. I'm not going to tell you that technique now. I'm going to tell you that particular method in my third presentation only, because it is a spiritual discussion. But in my classes, I used to tell to all those young boys about this particular method. That method was a very simple method, but it required a lot of commitment and dedication to practice it on a daily basis. So I told this method in every batches actually. In one particular batch, at the end of the 3 weeks course, one particular student came to me and he asked me, "Sir, this particular method, will it really work?" And I told him, yes, it will really work, because it is working in the spiritual dimension, not in the material dimension. And he asked me, "Sir, if you give me assurance, I will practice it." I told him, I am giving you guarantee. I'm not giving you just the assurance. I'm giving you guarantee. Practice this for 1 year. It will definitely work. And that boy told, "Okay, sir," and he went away. After about 6 months, this boy again came back to our office for some other work. And he met me there in the office. When he met me, he came to me and asked me, "Sir, that particular method we told us that money will increase in life by practicing that method. Have you done it?" He asked me. Then I told him, if I would not have done it, why would I advise you, or why would I tell you? First, I practice it in my life, then later on, I suggest it to other people. I suggest it to you people because I feel compassionate towards you. That is the reason I have told you. And then I asked him, "Have you started practicing it?" He said, Sir, I am thinking of practicing it. I have not made up my mind. Then I told him, as long as you keep on thinking of practicing it, you will not get it. You will only keep thinking of practicing it and you will not be successful in it. He simply looked at me and went away. I don't know whether later on he practiced or not. He never met me afterwards. But the point here I am telling is, as long as he is within his comfort zone, he does not want to come out of his comfort zone. He wants a lot of assurances and guarantees from me that these methods work. But he is still thinking about implementing those methods. Those methods will not work at all because he is not implementing them at all. So life begins at the end of your comfort zone. As long as you are within your comfort zone, no positive changes are going to happen. So naturally, no further progress is going to happen. You cannot depend on any palmist. You cannot depend on any astrologer for your future because future is not defined that way at all. Types of learners and their need. One type of learners, they are called assimilators. They'll keep asking what. Whoever is asking what, actually they are asking for information. Next type is the learners who are called divergers. They ask why. Now that is coming under motivation because along with information, they are asking why. Next type of learners are convergers. Converger are asking how. Now this how is part of experimentation. Now along with information, along with motivation, they require an experimentation. Next type of learners are called accommodators. They ask what if. This is called speculation. Just remember the Bloom's taxonomy of 6 levels, which I had told you earlier. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. It is this way progressing. Assimilators, divergers, convergers, and accommodators. So each of this type of learners will have their own need as such. On an average, per day, a child asks 40 questions, a youth asks 20 questions, and an adult asks 10 questions. In fact, I used to tell to some of my students in my classes that every class, one student should ask me one question. But I never used to get questions from my students as such. And it did not become successful fully. Because many times within the students group, many students were afraid to ask questions because they used to feel that they get insulted in the crowd. First thing. Second thing, many students did not have any questions at all because if they understand something, then only there will be question. So that was the pitiable condition of our education system to some extent. So even though I used to motivate them to ask questions, any type of questions, many of them never used to ask any questions. Actually, the present generation, they do not ask any technical questions. They ask all other questions about placement and salary and companies and all other things. But they don't understand that for becoming fit for all those other packages, they must be having the inner resource within them. They must have sufficient knowledge in the domain. That our youngsters are yet to understand. So on an average, per day, a child asks 40 questions, a youth asks 20 questions, an adult asks 10 questions. Reason is why? A child is curious. The child will first ask what, then why, then how, then what if. So if the child is asking 40 questions, youth will be asking around 20 questions because by the time he becomes a youth, he will lose some motivation of learning new things. And an adult asks 10 questions. Adult may not be asking all those questions which he was asking in his childhood. An adult loses interest about learning new things. Adult will be many times asking the repeated questions again and again. So this way, this indicates that the questioning ability reduces with the progress in the age. This means that after childhood, learning reduces as the crisis of self-identity and self-appraisal arises in the individual. When a child is asking questions, child is not worried about its self-identity or self-appraisal. The child is not worried about getting insulted, or child is not worried about whether the answer exists or not. But later on, in the young age, the self-identity arises. When the self-identity arises, the person will think double before asking somebody something, because he will be calculating within, if at all I ask this way, what may be the reaction on the other side, or what may happen to my own image which is there with the others. A child is not worried about that. So as the crisis of self-identity and self-appraisal arises in the individual, that self-appraisal, they are saying that there's a network problem. Yeah, but here on my side it is fine. Anyway, at your side, if there is a network issue, I cannot solve it. Let me go on. So after childhood, learning reduces as the crisis of self-identity and self-appraisal arises in the individual. Especially in the young age, people expect that they will be recognized in the crowd. In general, what happens in the young age is, especially in a classroom, if I have to tell you in a college atmosphere, in a classroom, the brilliants or the hard workers, they will be scoring well in their exams and they will be naturally recognized. Whereas the others who do not have that particular ability of either putting more hard work or scoring more marks in the exams, they will not be getting recognition in that way. But still, they want to be recognized in some way or the other. So at such times, what generally our students will do is, they will purposefully pierce one of the ear, they will have a ring in only one ear, or they will come through a very crazy hairstyle, or they will have a different color hair dye, or they will purposefully come with the typical type of dress which will be having varied colors, some type of crazy dressing, and even with the shoes, even with the footwear, they will start doing experimentation with the different styles. So there the basic need for them is self-appraisal. Somehow they also want recognition in the crowd. This especially happens in the adolescent age. In the adolescent age, they want a recognition. So due to this, they will lose their earlier questioning ability, because they don't want to learn anything new as such after a certain age. They just want more and more of recognition in the crowd, or they want more and more of self-boosting. This is basically a illusion. This is basically a problem with the social conditioning. So after childhood, learning reduces as the crisis of self-identity and self-appraisal arises in the individual. Hence, if you want to be a learner, become a child once again and retain that innocence. Learning attitude has to be lifelong, maybe after this life, for the next life as well. Learning attitude should continue this way, because learning never ends until you attain liberation or salvation. So if you want to be a learner, become a child once again, start questioning again. You can keep on questioning everything and anything that way, because through query only, answers will keep coming out. After a certain age, you will have to stop questioning also, because you will have to get those answers. Only questioning should not become a habit there. Along with questioning, you must be ready to obtain the answer as well. When you get more and more of answers, gradually intuitive ability will develop. Once the intuitive ability develops, all the answers are within you only. But until then, intellectual ability has to develop, for which questioning is also necessary. So if you want to be a learner, become a child once again and retain that innocence. I'm telling you, retain that innocence, because that self-identity and self-appraisal should not arise. If at all it has already arisen, it should be somehow curbed. It should be reduced. When your mind ends, then you have stopped learning. In general, when you have no more questions, you have stopped learning. You may ask, sir, do you have any questions? Even I have questions. I have many questions. And all these questions, I ask with whom? I ask with the ones who know the answers for such questions. Or I ask within myself. Somehow I get those answers also. I will also be getting some very high level questions. All those questions I will be sharing with you in my last presentation, which I keep on repeating again and again. There are these three crises: young age crisis, middle age crisis, and old age crisis. In the young age crisis, I have to understand the social system. In the middle age crisis, I have to change the social system. Somehow in the young age or in the middle age, people will become rebellions and they want to change the social system. In the old age crisis, I have to live in my own system. People want to have their own system of life, because they come to know that whole of the social system cannot be changed by them. Now, in the young age crisis, a child will think, I do not understand others. In the middle age crisis, the same person is thinking, others do not understand me. This is the situation which we feel when we deal with the adolescents or the young people. They keep on saying that others do not understand them. But in the old age crisis, the person says, I do not understand myself, because self realization itself is a much bigger achievement there, for which he had not put efforts in the young age or in the middle age. So in the old age, people say, I do not understand myself. In the young age, the child is curious about what becomes of me, because gradually body will be growing. When the body is growing, it does not know what will happen in the body. So it is asking what becomes of me. In the middle age, the person is thinking, what is becoming of me? By that time, the youth would have arrived and already body has grown to its full extent. Now, gradually in the middle age, some sickness issues may also arise. Now, in the middle age crisis, the person is asking, what is becoming of me? But in the old age crisis, the person is thinking, what has become of me? Let us say a person is retired, 65 years old, 70 years old, 75 years old, 80 years old. If he is an intellectual person, he'll have a crisis that all these years, what became of me? Because he has not realized his own self or her own self. Now, in the young age, the child wants to be with the family always, because with the parents, with the grandparents, with the householders. But in the middle age, especially in the adolescent age, in the young age, the family members are not much cared for. Many times in the young age, for the young people, the family members or the parents or the teachers are nuisance actually for them. They think that way. And they say, I want to be with my friends. And they generally think friends are the best people in my life. But in the old age, the person wants to be with himself, because neither the family nor the friends are understanding me, because I have not understood myself. So if people stay in these three ages, and if people spend their life in this crisis only, when will this crisis end? This crisis will never end, because the person has not understood himself or herself. In the young age, there is enough time but there is no money as such because money is not being earned by them, but there is enough energy. In the adult age, there is no time at all because life is spent in earning name, fame, and fortune. So, no time, but there is money, there is energy. In the old age, there is no time, there is enough time, there is enough money, there is no energy. Again, this is a young age, adult age, old age crisis. So, solution is what? Solution is you have time, you have money, you have energy. Plan your time for all good things. You should have a profession, you should have a passion. And you should have time, you should plan your time. And your money, don't spend money unnecessarily for lavishness. Don't spend money just for exhibition. Value the worth of money. Save money for the time of crisis. And energy, for having energy, have a physical exercise, have a relaxation, practice meditation, consume rasayana, remain healthy. So it is possible that you can have time also, you can have money also, you can have energy also, if you take care of your own self. It is possible that all the three crises can be easily overcome if the person becomes responsible for his own life or her own life without blaming the external factors. Look at this picture. Within the comfort zone, 90% of the population is within the comfort zone. Mediocre life, just survival, fear, tiredness, depression, settling, average. What if I can't? Nearly 90% of the population is within their comfort zone. That is when I keep on talking about that Gaussian distribution curve, where sigma is calculated, standard deviation is calculated, and sigma plus 1 minus 1 is calculated in that curve. I'm going to discuss that later. So if people are coming out of their comfort zone for trying out something different, or for achieving something different, for learning something different, for practicing something different, then there will be excitement, there will be success, there will be wealth and financial freedom. Because whatever is your profession, if that becomes your passion, you will be liking whatever you are doing. If you keep liking whatever you are doing, gradually you will develop efficiency. You will have knowledge also, you will have skill also, when you have a right attitude there. So when you have a knowledge as well as a skill, gradually you will earn money for your skills. So that is how you will have wealth, you will have financial freedom. You can have your dreams fulfilled, and you will have confidence, you will have belief, you will have passion, you will have fulfillment. Only if you come out of your comfort zone. But for which you will have to plan your time, you will have to plan your money, you will have to gain that energy. In general, the people on this earth can be classified into three types: kinesthetic, auditory, and visual. These are the three important senses. We can ignore the other two senses of smell and taste for that matter, because smell and taste are basically chemical senses, whereas touch, hearing, and vision are basically physical senses. So, out of these three, who are going to use which one predominantly? Based on that, we can classify people into three types. The people whose dominant sense is touch, they are called kinesthetic. The people whose dominant sense is sound, they are called as auditory. The people whose dominant sense is sight, they are called visual. Which means the visual people, they observe more. Auditory people, they talk more. Whereas the kinesthetic people, they feel more. So for the kinesthetic people, dominant organ is skin or pressure. And for auditory people, the dominant organ is ears or speech. And for visual people, the dominant organ is eyes or light. So the dominant quality of kinesthetic people is they are more into actions or body or kaya. Auditory people are more into words or walk. And visual people are more into thoughts or manas. These three are called as trikarana: kaya, vacha, manasa. Kaya, vak, manas. These are called trikarana, means body, speech, and mind. The maturity level of the kinesthetic people is in general low because they are not thinkers, they are not talkers, they are doers. When they are direct doers without thinking and without talking, they will end up in more trouble. You will generally see in the society many type of people, when they get into some type of argument or quarrel, gradually they get into a physical fight. That physical fight means they are neither thinking nor talking. They don't have a talking maturity also, thinking maturity also. They will be directly into the actions. So with such people, the maturity level is low. In general, it is called as tamoguna. That is why I have put it as tamasa. The maturity level with the auditory people is medium. Compared to the kinesthetic people, they are better. But they talk more. They don't think more. There are two things called reaction and response. Response comes out of a careful thinking, whereas reaction comes immediately. Which means reaction is coming out of a immature person just to immediately satisfy the ego at that time. Whereas the response comes out of a mentally stable person. So that way visual people are much better. Visual people are having a high level of maturity where they have a sattva guna. They are sattvika because they think more. Now, predominantly for the kinesthetic people, the eye movements will be downwards right. You can keep on watching a person's eyeballs whenever a person is behaving or talking. The left side brain and right side brain are connected to the left side eye and the right side eye that I have already discussed earlier. So that way, predominantly if the eye movement is downwards right, then we can say they are kinesthetic people. If the eye movement is predominantly downwards left, then we can say the person is auditory. And if the eye movement is upwards, then which means that he is using the upper cortex of the brain, which is more for thought process. And we can say he is a visual type. You can remember the picture of Mahatar Babaji, which I had shown you. And in that picture, you can recall the eyes position. It is looking upward. In fact, Mahatar Babaji used to always meditate on the Sahasrara Chakra, because of which his eyeballs were always looking upward. He is a high level visual personality. Now, the learning skill for kinesthetic people is writing because they are more into actions. The learning skill for auditory people is listening because they are more into speech. Where the learning skill for visual people is reading because they are observing more. So in our education process, we should have all the three, because in a diverse crowd in a classroom, we really don't know who is of visual type, who is of auditory type, who is of kinesthetic. Percentage wise, visual people will be only around 15 to 20%, very less percentage. And kinesthetic percentage will be much more, 50 to 60%, or maybe 40 to 50%. In between, the remaining percentage is auditory people. Of course, in general, everybody is talking, but in case of kinesthetic people, they will not have that lot of vocabulary or a lot of ability of words also. They will not have learnt it. That is when people get into physical fight, when they cannot talk further. So that way, in the education system, all three are necessary. Reading, listening, and writing, all three are necessary, because these three skills are going to address the visual ability, the auditory ability, and the kinesthetic ability. Now, the artistic skill for kinesthetic people is dancing because it is more of doing. Artistic skill for auditory people is singing because it is more of talking or using the speaking apparatus. The artistic skill for the visual people is painting because it is more of thinking and then doing. The predominant side which the kinesthetic people use is right brain because more of emotions. The predominant side which auditory people use left brain because it is more of thoughts. Whereas with visual people, there is a balance of thoughts and emotions because they will not react, they will respond. So visual people will be using both sides of the brain. In general, childhood is a kinesthetic phase, youth is an auditory phase, and adulthood is supposed to be a visual phase. That is how the sense organs utilization is being evolved. A child will be always comfortable if it is in the cozy lap of its own mother or father. That means it is experiencing the touch sense there. But when the young is growing up, young man or young woman, they will be expressing themselves through their own speech and they will be talking a lot. That phase we can call it as auditory. But gradually, when they grow up, when they come into adulthood, they should be able to regulate the speech as well as the feelings or the thoughts as well as the emotions so that they will observe more, they will think more, they will learn more. That was supposed to be so. As far as the Kundalini is concerned, this may be new for you. I will not get into these details now. We can discuss it at length in my third presentation. The ascent of Kundalini in case of kinesthetic people is only up to Manipura. With auditory, it will be up to Vishuddha, and with visual people, it will be up to Ajna. Ajna is at the center of the brain. Vishuddha is at the location of the throat. Manipura is at the location of the navel region. This is related to the 7 chakras. I'll be discussing about those chakras in my next presentation only. Everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb, it lives its whole life believing that it is stupid, told by Albert Einstein. This means that if the person is of a kinesthetic type, we cannot give him skill sets or learning assignments of visual type. We are unnecessarily training the student. At the same time, let us say a person is of visual type. We should not give him a learning assignment or the skill set which is meant for kinesthetic type. Then we are actually insulting him by giving him a lesser type of work where the person is capable of doing a larger type of work. So in the process of education, it becomes necessary that the system should recognize the type of the person, whether the person is visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. And based on that, the respective skill sets can be given, respective learning assignments can be given. But that is a challenge now in the present education system, where education system is more for livelihood and less for life as such. Then what about yoga? Okay, in the yoga, asana is for the kinesthetic people. Pranayama is for the kinesthetic people. Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana is for the visual people. In between, chanting of the Vedic mantras, reading of the Sanskrit literature, studying of the spiritual books, that is for auditory people. Now that way, all the 3 skills are going to be trained and all the 3 abilities are going to be emerging out of the person. The primary goal of yoga is ultimately through dharana and dhyana into samadhi to evolve everybody into the visual type only. That is the basic goal of the practice of yoga. Again, I repeat the same favorite sentence which I keep on telling. Patanjali is the greatest scientist on this earth. He put everything into that particular process of Ashtanga Yoga, where all the sense organs are being refined and the personality itself is being refined by the practice of yoga. I had earlier discussed about this unconsciously unskilled to unconsciously skilled through two graphs. Now there are the stages of learning. Unconsciously unskilled stage, the state is ignorant. There is no query, no questions at all, because it is unconscious and no skill. So no query, no questions. So the effect is no efforts, no achievements, because of which that line remains horizontal to the x-axis. You just recall that particular curve. In case of consciously unskilled, state is awareness, query is why, and this person wants to learn but does not know how. In the consciously skilled state, it is an effortful state, and the query is of what and how, and ideas will come only with conscious effort. But when the last stage is reached, unconsciously skilled state, it is basically an effortless state because skill has become part of the system. Now the query is about what if or experimentation, and ideas keep coming without conscious effort. This is very important. Ideas keep coming without conscious effort. But this stage will not come all of a sudden unless you devote a certain amount of time for putting everything into practice. Again, recall that particular curve where I had put time in the x-axis. You will have to devote at least 3 years of serious time on yourself to refine yourself, to become physically healthy, to become mentally healthy, and to evolve into a better human being. It requires a conscious effort in the beginning. That's why I have told ideas will come only with the conscious effort in case of a consciously skilled person. But once it becomes part of your system, then ideas keep coming without any conscious effort. That is the wonder. And that is how I again quote D.V. Gundappa, who could write nearly more than 900 verses in the book Mankutimmana Kagga. Sarvajna could write more than 2000 Tripadis. And all Shiva Sharanas, Basavanna, Mahadevi Akka, Allama Prabhu, they had written thousands of vachanas. How could they do it? Because ideas keep coming without conscious effort. How could Ilayaraja compose music for thousands of songs? And how could Uday Shankar keep on writing thousands of songs in Kannada? In Kannada, you can see how many beautiful Kannada poems are in the older Kannada movies. And major of them are written by Uday Shankar. And ideas used to come to him without conscious effort because he had reached the state of unconsciously skilled. That requires a serious plan and a planned mindset as well. Let me tell you some examples of the unconscious skills. In general, cycling, driving, cooking, swimming, professional skills, family skills are basically unconscious. In the sense, in the beginning, you will put a lot of effort to learn cycling or to drive or to cook or to swim. Or in my case, for when we start teaching, or even when I was working in the factory, for each profession, we had to have some skills. It took us some time. Even for soldering a component into the printed circuit board, I had to learn that skill consciously. It took some time. So, but later on it becomes unconscious skill because it becomes part of our system. It becomes our habit. Similarly, family skills. In the beginning, when two people get married and when a child is born, they'll not be knowing much about how to nurture a child or to take care of a child also. But gradually they have to learn those skills. And those are all family skills. Initially, they will have to put conscious effort for learning those skills. Later on, it will become an unconscious skill. So that way, cycling, driving, cooking, swimming, and professional skills and family skills these are the general skills which are an example of unconscious skills. Now there are some intellectual skills like chess, logic, artistic ability such as singing, dancing, painting, music, poetry. We have a world famous chess player in India called Vishwanathan Anand. But in the beginning, he used to spend a lot of times with himself and visualizing the whole chessboard, visualizing the moves, visualizing about the opponent's thought process. And it took him enough time to become a grandmaster. But later became an unconscious skill. Now, even when he wakes up from a sleep also, if a chessboard is in front of him, if an opponent is there, he is ready to play at that instant itself. So, these are some intellectual skills such as chess or logic. Logic means query and answer, query and answer. Initially, there must be a query and you will have an internal dialogue. Person should have an internal dialogue. Person himself should ask question to himself and person himself should try to find out the answer by himself. In the beginning, it will be a tough challenge, but gradually it becomes a habit and many answers emerge from within. Similarly, the artistic ability such as singing, dancing, painting, music, poetry. It requires a lot of training to oneself and later on it becomes an unconscious skill. There are spiritual skills, for example, yogic exercises. In the beginning, when you start doing yogasanas, for the 1 week or 2 weeks or for 1 month, you will have body pain because your body was not adapted to such movements. When you have body pain, you will think that this is something useless, it is inducing me pain, and you may stop it. If you stop it, you will lose it. Actually, there must be pain in the body always in one way or the other. This pain is a challenge which we are giving to the body, and body is trying to stubbornly survive. When the body tries to stubbornly survive, we are giving it a daily challenge of purposefully making it some other position where some amount of pain will be induced in the body. And the body will keep on trying to eradicate the pain. This way it will go on. So in the beginning, yogic exercise will be really challenging for a beginner. That is when people give it up. But gradually it has to become an unconscious skill, means you should devote a sufficient amount of time for its practice. Similarly, sacred chanting, chanting of the Vedic mantras requires clear-cut pronunciation by using Kanthya, Mordhanya, Talavya, Ostya, Dantya. We have 5 sets of consonants there and they have to be carefully pronounced using the speaking apparatus. All the vowels are coming out of the throat and all the consonants are modulated within the mouth. So it requires a specific pattern of chanting. And thought control. In the beginning, thought control is really very difficult. But through the process of meditation, it is possible to control the thought. Later on, it becomes an unconscious skill. Similarly, the outcome of thought control is intuitions. Only when your mind stops chattering, that is when the one who is within you starts communicating. In general, it is called as sound of silence. In the Zen meditation, they specifically use this particular term called sound of silence. You will have to listen to the sound of silence because he is silent. We are talking. As long as we are talking, we are not communicating with him. We are communicating within ourselves. If we have to communicate with him, then we have to become silent. So that way, through thought control, gradually you will develop into intuitions and revelations. When there are revelations coming out of you, you will be called as a prophet or a saint or a sage. So these are again unconscious skills. Don't think that unconscious skills are there only with the normal people. Even with the spiritual people, there are high level unconscious skills. If you have to be unconsciously skilled, then learning should become a lifelong habit. If you don't change, then you will remain unconsciously unskilled lifelong. That is a great injustice which you are going to do on yourself. Let us say your intellectual level remains the same at the age of 80 years, whatever it was there at 18 years. Then it means that in the process of so many decades, you did not evolve at all mentally. Only your physical body grew, your mental status remained same. One example. Another example is a worst example. Worst example in the sense, if at all you are worse than the person who were at 18 at the age of 80, then that is a serious punishment which you are giving to yourself by not at all understanding that life is a divine gift. Again, until you learn the lessons, lessons will be repeated as per the law of karma. Let me discuss some learners now. Bill Gates, degree incomplete, became the owner of Microsoft Corporation. Raj Kapoor, Dhirubhai Ambani, A.R. Rahman, they studied only up to PUC. Walt Disney, Sachin Tendulkar, only up to SSLC. Walt Disney, remember the Tom and Jerry cartoon, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck cartoon. What beautiful cartoons. Even adults will enjoy watching those cartoons. But Walt Disney studied only up to SSLC. Sachin Tendulkar used to practice a lot even during his school days only for the cricket. And that's how he became a world famed cricketer. But he studied only up to SSLC. Abraham Lincoln, Dr. Rajkumar, Rajnikant, only partial schooling. Abraham Lincoln became president. Dr. Rajkumar, we already know, multi-talented personality, an actor, a singer, an orator, a humane person. Rajnikant, you already know, who was a bus conductor, now he became a superstar in the Tamil film industry. They all had only partial schooling. They did not complete their school education itself. Thomas Alva Edison, Richard Branson, no schooling at all. In fact, Thomas Alva Edison was sent out of the school by his own teacher, complaining to his mother that your son is good for nothing. He will not do anything else. But he became a world famous scientist later on. He has invented thousands of items later on. All the education to him was given by his own mother. So there was no schooling at all in case of Thomas Alva Edison and Richard Branson. Look at these examples, right from Bill Gates till Thomas Alva Edison, where degree incomplete, only up to PUC, only up to SSLC, partial schooling, no schooling at all. Now what does this indicate? Does this indicate that schooling is of no use or education is of no use? Remember the sentence which Swami Vivekananda told? Education is the process of bringing out the hidden talent which is already there within the person. So, unfortunately, with all these people, their schooling or their education did not help them in bring their talent out. Still, their talent came out in one way or the other through their own dedication and through their own efforts. Akbar Badshah, he did not know reading, he did not know writing. Forget about schooling. He did not know reading also, he did not know writing also. But he became one of the famous emperors in this land of India. You already know so many stories about Akbar and Birbal. But he did not know reading, he did not know writing. Remember, you cannot become like them unless you work like them. Even though they did not have all this formal education, they came up in their lives just because of their sheer dedication of learning. They might not have learned anything in the formal school, but they learned many things in the larger school called life. And they have put their own efforts for coming up in life. They simply did not become famous that way, or they simply did not become successful that way. So you cannot say that it is luck. Luck has a full form, Luck. Luck means labor under correct knowledge. There must be enough knowledge and there must be a labor. Otherwise, there is no luck as such. No planet is deciding your luck, and no line on your hand is deciding your luck. So people cannot become like them unless you work like them. Out of the very large population of the world, this type of achievers is really a very small number. The people who really plan their life and the people who gradually use the resources which are given by God and gradually who uplift themselves, such percentage is rare. Again, it is a personal decision always, or a personal choice always. Look at this picture. Rajnikant, at the age of 25, I was a bus conductor. Bill Gates, I didn't even complete my university education. Abraham Lincoln, at my childhood days, I stitched shoes. Dhirubhai Ambani, I worked in a petrol pump. Sachin Tendulkar, I failed in the 10th standard. Shah Rukh Khan, I slept on bench and borrowed rupees 20 every day from a friend to travel to Film City. A.R. Rahman, education dropout and initially a keyboard player. Lionel Messi, I used to serve tea at a shop to support my football training. So the tagline is, life is not about what you could not do so far, it is about what you still can. Famous failures. Einstein. He wasn't able to speak until he was almost 4 years old, and his teacher said he would never amount to much. There is a funny story about Einstein and his driver. When Einstein proposed his theory of relativity, special theory of relativity and general theory of relativity, actually Einstein was a patent clerk. In the patent office, he was a clerk. He used to study a lot of patents by himself and he used to develop ideas on this. He was not a big experimenter, but he was a serious thinker. And finally, he gave a definition that time is also relative, space can also be curved. Space can be having curvature and time is always relative. You will have to read his book on special theory of relativity and general theory of relativity. So at that time, photography was not there as such. The media, whatever we have nowadays, it was not there. Many universities used to call Einstein to give a lecture in their universities for the students. So Einstein used to go to so many universities to give lectures on his theory of relativity. And he used to have a driver. The driver used to be with him for many years. And wherever Einstein used to go, driver also used to sit in the audience, and driver used to listen to the speech which Einstein used to give. After so many months, one day the driver told the scientist that I have been listening to your lecture for so many number of times. Now I have your lecture completely in my memory. So whenever you give a speech next time in a new university, I already know what are you going to speak there. Okay. Einstein simply laughed. Later on, after a few days, Einstein had an invitation from some other university. Actually, at that time, photography was not there, so nobody knew how Einstein looked like. So on the way when they were going, Einstein simply told to driver, we will do one thing. Now when we are going, nobody knows that you are the driver and I am the scientist. When we reach the campus, I will sit in the driver's seat, you sit in the back seat, you only give a lecture. Driver said, no sir, how is it possible? Now Einstein said, you have already memorized my complete speech by listening to this so many times. You don't worry. Anyhow, the same speech you simply deliver. Let us see what will happen. And Einstein persuaded the driver to do that. Finally, driver somehow agreed. With a little bit of fear, he agreed. So when they arrived at the campus, Einstein was driving the car and the driver was sitting at the back seat. Naturally, they thought the person who is sitting at the back seat is Einstein. They took him all the way to stage and the driver gave a speech of about 1 hour on this special theory of relativity. And at the end, after everything was over, audience asked one particular question to the speaker. The speaker was the driver now. Now the driver told that for this particular question, even my driver can answer, and he pointed at Einstein. Einstein was sitting at the back at the audience and he pointed at Einstein. And finally, Einstein gave the answer. But later on, the driver told the truth that I am actually the driver. He is the famous scientist, Einstein. This was Einstein's wit and humor. How could people ignore him when his teacher said he would never amount to much? I am pointing out to some of the lacunae which are there in the present education, where some teachers suddenly become judgmental about their students. But look at the case of Albert Einstein. Look at the case of Thomas Alva Edison. Michael Jordan. From his high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and he cried because he got cut from his high school basketball team. Walt Disney, fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. Now we have a Disney park in USA. Steve Jobs, at 30 years old, he was left devastated and depressed after being unceremoniously removed from the company he started. Now you already have iPhone. Oprah Winfrey was demoted from her job as a news anchor because she wasn't fit for television. She became a television star. The Beatles, rejected by Decca Recording Studios, who said we don't like their sound, they have no future in show business. And they created their own future. If you have never failed, you have never tried anything new. So, academic failures do not mean that the people are unfit. Academic failures are part of this rat race, where intellectual ability is judged in different ways of memorizing whatever is in the textbook and writing it in the answer script and getting the grades for it, and in the next few months forgetting whatever they have written in the book itself. That is the failure of the present education system. Swami Vivekananda has told a beautiful sentence. In a day, when you don't come across any problems, you can be sure that you are traveling in a wrong path. In a day, you will come across problems. Actually, you should come across problems. Now, those problems will test you whether you will be able to solve them or not. Many times people create problems. Many times nature creates problems. Problems are part of life. Through problems only, even the birds and animals learn new skills. In the YouTube, watch videos of birds of paradise. Search for this tagline, birds of paradise, and watch those particular videos where there are some special islands called Papua New Guinea Islands. It's a dense forest where there are some special kinds of birds, they have special skills. I will not tell about that. You search for these birds of paradise and you watch it. Then you will really wonder, even an ordinary looking bird will have a very special skill because it develops those skills by coming over through the problems. So in a day when you don't come across any problems, you can be sure that you are traveling in a wrong path. Which means what? If there are no problems, you are not going to learn anything. If everybody is relaxing and enjoying life, there cannot be a mental evolution at all. Everybody will become lazy afterwards. This is a funny picture. Do you have a problem in your life? No, then don't worry. Do you have a problem in your life? Yes. Can you do something about it? No, then don't worry. Can you do something about it? Yes, then don't worry. Ultimately, you should not worry. If there's a problem, you should be able to solve the problem. If the problem is unsolvable, then you should be able to live with the problem. There are some problems which can be unsolvable. Then you should be able to sail through the problem as such. Problem will become part of your life there. You should simply live with it. Or if there is no problem, then also you need not worry. Ultimately, worries will not solve any problems. Worry itself is a bigger problem there. Three monks or four monks. Four monks wanted to have a vow of silence. So these four monks, they lit a lamp in the middle of the room and they sat for meditation in the four corners. And they had made a vow that till morning they will not open their mouth. That was their vow. Now what happened was, after a few minutes or after a few hours, wind blew heavily and the lamp got extinguished. When the lamp got extinguished, in the darkness, the four monks were remaining silent. After about an hour, one particular monk was completely worried. He kept on worrying and he thought, lamp is extinguished. We four people are sitting here. No one is going and lighting the lamp once again because we are all on a vow of silence. So he kept on worrying about it and he suddenly opened his mouth and he told, lamp got extinguished. Other three remained silent because they were on a vow of silence. After about an hour, one more monk slowly opened his lips and he told, why did you break the vow of silence? Because the second person was worried that this fellow broke the vow of silence. Other two monks were remaining silent. So after about 1 hour or 2 hours, the third monk was in a serious worry. The third monk opened his mouth and told, he spoke, all right. Why did you speak? Because the third monk was worried, both of them broke the vow of silence. Now three of them broke the vow of silence. It was almost a daybreak, sunrise has not yet happened, but the fourth monk was in a very serious worry that all three people have broken the vow of silence. So at the end, almost before sunrise, the fourth monk told, all you three people have broken the vow of silence, but I did not speak at all. Ultimately, all the four broke the vow of silence. They could not remain silent at all because each one was worrying about someone else. Now, that worry is the biggest problem. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Told by a great author, Leo Tolstoy. Look at this curve. At the x-axis, you have a level of pressure. At the y-axis, you have a performance. For anybody, there is an optimum amount of pressure required. If there is no pressure, everybody will become lazy. So, if there is a minimum level of pressure, then it is boredom because there is no activity, only eating and sleeping. Imagine if my father would have become a millionaire and if he would have left a big bank balance for me, I would never go to any job. I would never get into any spiritual pursuit also. I would never take any of these sessions also because I would be busy spending my father's money. So my life will be always boredom and rusting out. Now, if the level of pressure is average, then it is a comfortable performance. You can see the y-axis also, there will be a comfortable performance. There must be at least some amount of pressure given to any particular individual, only then they will be accountable. When they are accountable, then only they will perform. Now, if the pressure increases further, if the pressure becomes maximum, it can be stretch, it can be strain, it can be overwhelming. If it crosses a certain limit, then the pressure itself will become the cause for burnout. There should not be too much of pressure. For example, if an engine is working for 8 hours, for the next 8 hours, it should be given rest. Even if a horse is drawing a cart, let us say for continuous 6 to 8 hours, whole night the horse should be given rest. Otherwise, if the pressure is increasing, there can be burnout. So, key to sustainable performance is oscillate between stretch and comfort. Between the yellow region and the green region, there must be some type of oscillation. Then there will be maximum performance here. But generally people think that if there is more pressure, there will be more output. Wrong. That is called a zone of delusion. Optimum performance is in the yellow zone or in between green and yellow zone. If it is more, it is called zone of delusion, where people will simply burn out. Any type of pressure which these industrial people are giving to their employees, that you work more, you produce more, you work more, you produce more. What generally happens is within the next 2 to 3 years, the person will leave that company because they cannot handle that much of pressure. So that is called a zone of delusion, where it will result in fatigue, poor judgment, poor decision making, and finally, if it is the red area, exhaustion, serious health problems, breakdown, and burnout. Ultimately, the person will lose his physical health and mental health, and the company will look for some other substitute. So, all of us should have this optimum amount of pressure. Let us say, for example, no one is giving you that pressure. Then what is the next choice? You should give pressure to yourself. If you don't give pressure to yourself, again you are rusting out. Some of you may think that you may be entrepreneurs, you yourself may be into business, and you may think that there is nobody to put pressure for us because we are putting pressure to our employees. You may think that way. Now again take a decision. You must put pressure to yourself for such achievements, both for physical health and mental health. It is not just for money making. Even for good health also, you require some amount of pressure. For example, I keep on putting pressure on my senior level yoga students that they should learn Sanskrita, they should learn Sanskrita. If I don't put pressure, many of them will not learn at all, will not put any effort to learn at all. But that is a basic requirement that when they come to the senior classes, they should be able to speak Sanskrit, they should be able to understand Sanskrit, they should be able to read Sanskrit. That is the minimum requirement. So I personally put pressure on them. Some students will put pressure on themselves and they will clear those exams. Otherwise, I have to keep putting pressure on them. Otherwise, it is rusting out. But I should put a limit that it should not be a burning out. In fact, nobody is burning out. Either they'll be rusting out or they'll be performing. That's all. Because it is not related to money making as such. Now, what is the action plan? After all this said and done, what is the action plan? Thought will become action, action will become habit, habit will become character, character will become your destiny. This is already known to you. So, observation must lead to reflection, it should lead to introspection, and then it should lead to action. Action should not come out spontaneously as a reaction. Action should always come out as a response, which means there must be an effective observation. Based on that, there must be an effective reflection within. Then there must be an introspection of the self. Then finally, outcome should be an action. So don't waste time in these mundane activities. Which all these mundane activities? Coffee, tea. Bunny baita coffee kudukambarana. Bunny tea kudukambarana. Coffee aita, tea aita. Many times people spend time in the cafeteria more than their own office. And then chatting, regular chatting or mobile chatting or internet chatting. Somebody puts a chat message, somebody else will answer. Again, one more, goes on like this. It's an addiction. I keep telling that the mobile addiction is much worse than all other addictions. Internet chatting, then reading newspapers and magazines, right from first page till last page, reading everything which is there in the newspaper, and then later on discussing and reading these magazines, especially film magazines or sports magazines, and discussing about all the sports stars and the film stars as if they are your role models. This way, time keeps on going. Morning till evening, time can simply pass in these mundane activities and in television, and keeping on listening to music. Which type of music? All types of songs. And then all types of movies. You should choose movies. You should not simply watch all the movies. All of you should watch these 3 movies. One movie is 10 Commandments. Evertime classical movie, 10 Commandments. It is the story of Moses. All of you should watch this particular movie, 10 Commandments. Whenever I get some free time at home, I keep on watching this movie again and again and again. I must have watched this movie till now more than 50 times. Still, I keep on watching this movie. There is a lot of learning from this particular movie, 10 Commandments. It is not just for the Christians. It is not just for the Yehudis. It is for all of the intellectual human beings to learn lessons of spirituality. That is there in this particular movie, 10 Commandments. The next movie all of you should watch is Ben-Hur. In both of these movies, it is the same hero, Charlton Heston. 10 Commandments is the story of Moses, whereas Ben-Hur is the story of a prince called Ben-Hur, who is a contemporary of Jesus Christ. So partially this film is the story of Jesus Christ as well. But the film is not fully on the story of Jesus Christ. The story is in between 2 friends, Ben-Hur and his friend. You watch this movie. Very wonderful, beautiful movie. So one movie you should watch is 10 Commandments. Second movie you should watch is Ben-Hur. The third movie you should watch is Good, Bad and the Ugly. This third movie is not a philosophical movie, but it is a movie which will generally indicate the people's nature or people's character. It is basically a comedy movie. It is an entertainer with very good music, background score. Whenever I have time, I'll keep on watching these 3 movies any number of times. In fact, some of the dialogues have become memorized by me. So choose movies, select movies. Don't simply go to any particular movie just for the sake of time pass. Now, restaurants, whenever you have time, go to a particular restaurant, keep on eating, keep on shitting next day. Then going to shopping mall simply. People will have enough credit cards, people will have enough debit cards, any type of cards they will have. And they will have Google Pay, Phone Pay, all types of pay they have. So simply going to shopping malls when they don't have anything else to do, simply going to shopping malls and simply buying something, even if they don't want to buy anything also, for the sake of passing time and for the sake of satisfying ego, they'll simply go to shopping malls and pass their time. And going to picnics. Out of picnics, if you can really learn something out of it, if the picnic becomes a pilgrimage, it is worth it. Otherwise, simply going to places and wasting time there, again by involving in such chit chatting or involving in alcohol drinking, very pathetic situation. In Karnataka, there are very beautiful places such as Himavadgiri Betta and Muttatti, Kalatgiri Falls. But if you go there, you will feel so sad that even on the top of Himavadgiri Betta, you can see beer bottles. In Muttatti, you can see. Even in Kalatgiri Falls, below there is a temple, above on the hill, you can see beer bottles. That means people go to such places also to spoil them in the name of picnic. Now, my dear friends, don't waste your time in all these mundane activities. If you keep wasting your time in all these mundane activities, whatever personalities which I have shown earlier, you will not become even 1% of them. It's impossible. I don't mention the bad habits here. Those people are unfit to see these slides directly, because otherwise I'm simply wasting my time in scolding them or criticizing them, but they are not going to change. So I will not mention them at all here. Chances of success. I won't is 0%. I can't is 10%. I don't know how is 20%. I wish I could is 30%. I want to is 40%. I think I might is 50%. I might is 60%. I think I can is 70%. I can is 80%. I am is 90%. I did is 100%. Look at this spiral. This will be my last for today. Tomorrow I will be concluding this particular presentation. Today is the 17th one. Tomorrow will be the 18th one, and I will be concluding tomorrow. Look at this upward spiral and look at this downward spiral. This is an emotional guidance scale. You can just go through these numbers. Joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, appreciation. Number 2 is passion. Number 3 is enthusiasm. Number 4 is positive expectation and belief. Number 5 is optimism. Number 6 is hopefulness. Number 7 is contentment. Actually, this is an upward spiral. Contentment, hopefulness, optimism, positive expectation and belief, enthusiasm, passion, and joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, appreciation. This is an upward spiral. Now look at the downward spiral. Boredom, pessimism, frustration, irritation, impatience, overwhelmment, disappointment, doubt, worry, blame, discouragement, anger, revenge, hatred, rage, jealousy, insecurity, guilt, unworthiness, fear, grief, depression, powerlessness, victim. Now, number 1 is joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, appreciation. And this number 22 in the downward spiral is fear, grief, depression, powerlessness, and victim. No one else is responsible for any of these things except the oneself. You watch that movie, 10 Commandments. In that movie, Moses delivers all of them all the way. He liberates them from their slavery. He brings them all the way to a new land, and he tells them to wait there, and he goes up to the Mount of Sinai to get the message of God. But by the time he comes back with the 10 Commandments, the same people have wasted their time in merriment and in committing sins. So now Moses comes back and says, 1,000 times you have seen the miracles of God, still you don't have faith in the God's action. So those who shall not live by the law shall die by the law. In fact, that itself is the law of karma. Those who shall not live by the law of the divine, shall die by the law. That is also the law of divine. So you can compare this upward spiral and downward spiral. No one else is responsible either to a degradation or to an upgradation except the oneself. And it is always the choice of the particular person. And it is always the usage of the freedom given by the divine. And the freedom given itself is dharma. With this word, let me stop for today. Tomorrow, I will be concluding the session. So let us meet tomorrow. Until then, take care and bye-bye.